I hope you're fired up for the Olympics because this tutorial is going to be all about Olympic-y stuff, and it's going to involve stroking stuff in Photoshop in the best way possible, and all kinds of other color and particle and brushing effects. You're absolutely going to love it. Stick around. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome into this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. Today we're going to take a look at this kind of cool star-bursting Olympic ring effect. We're going to cover the entire effect, soup to nuts, starting from a blank Photoshop document all the way through. It looks complicated. It's actually not too bad to create. I think you're going to have a lot of fun creating it. I certainly did have a lot of fun coming up with it. Now, before we get going, got to push the products as always. I've got a link that's going to appear somewhere up, probably more like right over there. It links to a product that I'm selling on my website. It's a course all about how to retouch images in Photoshop. It's going to be incredibly helpful for you. And if you pick up a copy, it helps support the site, which is always cool, and I will be very appreciative of that if you pick it up. So go ahead, click that link. You can check it out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this tutorial and take a look at what we got to take a look at. This is what we're going to create. Now, there are, I should mention before we go any further, a couple brushes that might be helpful. Now, you don't need these exact brushes. These are just kind of some example brush packs that are similar. If you have something similar on your computer, by all means, go ahead and use them. So some kind of particle brush pack will be helpful. Some kind of flare brush pack will be helpful. And then some sort of like geometric shape. I don't know how to describe this type of brush, but you can see it kind of has these almost like shards of glass and, you know, very geometric. I honestly searched geometric, I think, on brusheasy.com to find this. And let's go ahead and create a new document. Command or Control N to create a new document. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but my interface is much larger. I noticed some people mentioning in the comments that the screen was a little bit too large. So, hey, you got your wish, and I'm making my screen a little bit smaller so that it makes it easier for everybody to view. And I appreciate, by the way, those kind of constructive comments, stuff that's going to help make the tutorials better. I really do, because I don't really sit around all day and watch my own videos. You do. So if you see something that you think could be improved, by all means, say something. All right, so 2560 for the width, height of 1440 pixels, and we're going to hit OK. It's going to give us this nice new document. We can leave the background layer locked, or we can unlock it. In this case, I'm going to leave it locked, and I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation. We're going to change the color of our background. I'm going to tick on Colorize. I'm going to reduce lightness. I'm going to boost saturation quite a bit, and I'm going to move Hue over here to like the blue into purple. I'm kind of colorblind, so it's difficult for me to see exactly where blue stops and purple begins, but I know that like by here I'm at pink. I know purple probably is somewhere right around there. I'm going to drop brightness or lightness even more. I want it to be pretty stinking dark, maybe like -96, -95, something like that. Hit OK. Next, we're going to create a new layer by, of course, hitting the New Layer icon. I'm going to name this layer Pink Spot, and I'm going to grab my brush tool. Now, here with the brush tool, I'm going to just select one of these large soft edge brushes. 500 pixels is great. Maybe we actually want to push it up to more like 1,000. Well, that's 100. Let's add a third zero. Basic first grade math tells us that. There we go. 1,000 pixels is what we need. Now, I want to go Window Brush. We're going to actually be using our brush panel quite extensively throughout this tutorial, so you're going to probably keep it open for the bulk of the tutorial. I'm going to shift it over to here. One of the things that I want to change, I'm going to select Brush Tip Shape, and I'm just going to squish my brush down a little bit. So make the roundness about 50, 52%, something like that. You can see I got this big, like, oval now, and that actually is showing me that I need to make my brush even larger. I don't want it to be quite that big. Maybe 1,400, 1,600 pixels, something like that. Maybe 1,600. I'm just going to dial it in. 1,650, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to double-click on my brush panel to just collapse it, tuck it out of the way momentarily. And we want to create sort of this pink spot. So I'm going to just click once. It's a large soft edge brush. I'm going to hit Command or Control A, select the letter V, and I'm going to just align this, make sure it's as aligned as it can be. And I think actually the blurriness on the edges of this big spot are going to extend to the edge, so it's not really going to let us really align it to the center. But whatever, we're close enough to the middle there. And we're going to go again here, Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, and I'm basically just going to make this kind of like a pink. So again, tick on Colorize. Because it's a color white, we need to immediately drop lightness so we can see something, increase saturation, and then we're going to bring this over to like this almost reddish pink color. That's pretty good. We can go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to set this to the blend mode of screen, and maybe I'll even drop the opacity a bit, maybe something like 50, maybe even a little bit more, 35, something like that. Hit Command or Control T. That's going to bring up Free Transform, and we're actually going to make this a little bit bigger. So just hold down your Shift key. Whoa, hello. Started scrolling off there. Hold down your Shift key, and you can just expand that a little bit. I'm going to bring it down here to the bottom of my document and expand it upward a little bit. There we go, something like that. I can commit that change. And if you're seeing a little bit of banding, right, you can sort of see those little lines. We can help alleviate that a little bit by going Filter, Noise, Add Noise. You want to make sure here when you're adding noise, you're adding monochromatic noise. And just like 2 or 3% noise typically will help you get rid of that kind of banding effect. The noise just helps kind of blend the colors together a little bit more naturally. So next up, what we want to do is create another new layer, and we're going to name this one White Spot, and this is going to be just a brightness kind of hot spot right in the middle. So again, grab the brush tool, and it probably doesn't need to be quite 1650. We can probably dial this back to maybe 1300 even. Again, hardness is 0. I want it to have very soft edges. My foreground color is already set to white. I'm just going to click once in the middle of my document, and again here we can select all by going select all, grab the move tool, and with the move tool we can just make sure we align it to both the vertical and horizontal centers there. Now with this white spot, we're going to set the blend mode to overlay. It's going to help bring out some of that background color and blend it a little bit with our little pink spot there. And I'm going to reduce the opacity, drop it down to around 50% or so as well. The next thing I want to do is bring in my color scheme. So in my original document, I actually have 5 colors here, here in this layer group, and I'm going to drag them over, and I'm going to drop them in my document. I'm going to pop them right up here in the top corner, and you can see they're in a layer group called colors. I like to have these here because at any point I can grab my eyedropper tool, I can sample, grab a green or a red or orange, blue, whatever. These colors, if you want to see what they are, I can just quickly cycle through. The green color is 0FC356, and by the way, pause the video at any point. I'm going to try to just blast through these if you want to write them down for yourself and get the exact colors I'm using. The blue is 3AACFF. The orange color is FBB031. The red color is FF2727. And last but not least, the pink color is ED00D9. So those are the exact colors I'm using, and I just have little rectangles, and they're all just kind of spaced, looking nice up in the corner, always ready for me to sample from, and when I need to get rid of them, I can just hide that layer. So now that we've done that, I want to kind of create a little bit of a color overlay for this entire image. So I'm going to create another new layer, and I'm just going to call this Colorize. Now what I'll do is I'll grab my brush tool. I am going to open up my brush panel. I'm going to set the roundness of the brush back to 100%, so it's a regular circular brush. I'm going to reduce the size of my brush down to around 475 is probably good. Go ahead and hit the X key. And what we're going to do is with these colors, we're just going to paint kind of a little bit, I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. We're just going to paint a couple dabs in and around the image, something like this. I'm just going to kind of try to blend some of these colors together. They're going to sort of interact with the background a little bit, I think. I don't know. I'm also half experimenting, if I'm being honest with you right now. All right, there we go. Now, there's a lot of transparency still on these layers, so I want to duplicate this colorized layer by hitting Command or Control J 1, 2, maybe 3 times. Then holding down my Shift key, I can just select the bottom colorized layer, hit Command or Control E to merge them all together. Now to really make this color smooth, we'll go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and blur this by, I don't know, 175 pixels, something like that. That looks pretty good. Maybe we'll bump it up to 250. I don't know. Take it to your heart's delight. And now that we have this layer, what we'll do is we'll try setting this to like color dodge. It should just brighten up the background layer. You're going to see it's doing a lot of damage right now. But the key to this is really severely reducing the opacity. And I mean, it just looks like it's just a little bit too much maybe. The colors maybe are a little bit too bright, too vibrant. So we'll hit Command or Control U. We'll just try reducing the saturation, maybe 50%, something like that. Let's try this again, color dodge. It's still doing a lot of craziness to the background. Let's just reduce the overall opacity, maybe drop it to like 15, 20%. There's before, there's after. We're just looking to infuse some kind of almost random color, random pattern to the background. This is going to allow us to do that. Now to get rid of some of this banding, we can add a little bit of noise to the colorized layer and also to the background layer. So we'll go Filter, Noise, Add Noise. Let's see what that does. That looks okay. We'll go to the white spot layer, add a little bit of noise to that, and then also to the background. When we add it to the background, it really adds a lot of noise. So we're going to go Filter Noise for the background layer and maybe only add 1%, something like that. Hit OK, and that really helps smooth things out a lot. All right, so we're kind of building our background. We're just about to the point where we need to draw our Olympic rings. Now, actually, before we do that, I think I'm going to create another sort of light spot in the middle to start introducing. We're going to kind of have this yellow burst of sparks coming from the Olympic rings. I know that. So maybe just right now, for the sake of building this in a little bit more of like a layer stacking order, let's create what I'll call yellow color burst. And make sure we name our layers correctly. And what we'll do here on this layer is, again, just grab the brush tool. It can be a big soft edge brush. Maybe take it down a couple notches, 800 or so. We'll sample this orange, but I actually want it to be more like a butter yellow. So I'll make it more like this. All right, and just click once right around the center of the document. If we wanted to stretch it out a little bit, you can always hit Command or Control T and just stretch it side to side a little. Maybe I'll pinch it down just a little. Something kind of like that. That looks cool. Let's try setting this to a blend mode of something like overlay. You can see it's just going to give us an additional kick of light. We're trying to set ourselves up for success later on. All right, so what we now need to do is begin drawing our Olympic rings. So just for the sake of kind of getting rid of distractions, I'm going to hide the colors layer group here, and we're going to grab the shape tool. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool. So I'm going to hold down my shift key, and I'm going to drag out a circle. I don't know, right about that size looks about right, doesn't it? All right, something like that. And very quickly, you can just test to see kind of what this would look like. Hold down your Alt-Option key and drag this over. Maybe we'll give it a gap of about 50 pixels. All right, by the way, I get those markers because I've got View, Show, and Smart Guides turned on. You'll see this is helpful if I hold down Alt-Option, drag this out again. It'll say, all right, there you go, exactly 50 pixels on both of them. Great. Then I can take this over, and I can center it between the document, or between the ellipses, and drop it like right there. And I can drag this guy over and try to drop him right in the same place. And that's roughly, you know, that looks pretty good. That looks like it'll fit the size of our document. That looks pretty good. Now, we really don't need any of these other ellipses. So I'm just going to delete all of them. All we need is this one, and in fact, all we really need is a path. So we didn't even need to drag out a shape. We could have just gone up here and chosen path, but whatever, this will work all the same. We can select this path. By the way, I just grabbed the path selection tool. So we can select the path. So with this selected, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this layer. Now remember, we have, we got to save our shape path here. So we just double click on this and we choose to name this something like, I don't know, circle path. That's probably fine. And at this point, we can grab this layer and drag it to the garbage. So boom, that's gone. But if we go back to our paths layer, you can see our circle path is still there. Now we need this path because we're going to begin stroking this path with many brush strokes. Not really many, 5 or 6, maybe 8, 9, 10, something like that. So go ahead and create a new layer. We're going to begin first by creating sort of very thin little stripling paths that are going to go all around this circle in various directions. And then we're going to follow it up with kind of a thicker, more like a paint stroke that's going to live beneath these sort of highlight, almost like specular highlight little strokes that we're going to draw. Maybe it'll be easier to just show you rather than try to explain. So here I'm going to double click and I'm just going to rename this layer circle. We're going to have a bunch of these circle layers, as you're going to see. Now before I get started, I'm going to turn my colors layer back on. I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool and just select this green because this circle is going to be green, and we're going to be doing this with each of our shapes. Grab the brush tool. Let's go brush tool. Let's open up our brush panel again. You can just hit that little folder. And I'm going to choose maybe like a 3-pixel brush. Yeah, that's probably big enough. We're going to go 3 pixel. You want this to be a hard-edged brush. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tick on Shape Dynamics. Now, I'm not going to break out the Wacom tablet. You can do this without a tablet. We're going to go Control Fade. And I'm going to just guess that I want this to be around 1250 in terms of like the pixels it covers or the steps it takes. I think really is the unit of measure. So we're going to go with 1250, see how that looks. I'm also going to go to Transfer and choose an opacity jitter and fade this over 1250 as well. So my opacity is going to fade out at the same rate at which my size fades down to nothing. All right, so let's just hide this. And what we'll do, we're on our new layer. It's a blank layer. We're going to go back to the paths. We have our foreground color set to that green. At this point, we right-click on our path, and we choose to stroke the path. Using the brush tool, remember we just set up the brush tool with that opacity jitter and that size jitter. That was that whole fade thing we set up. And we want to choose to simulate pressure. That's important to have that checked on. Hit OK, and let's see what we get. I'm going to deselect my, my path. And you can see we get this really bright line that fades off to nothing. All right, I think it needs to be a little bit longer, right? There's not enough of the path showing. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to select the circle path again. So, hey, guys, I want to take a quick breather from this Olympic tutorial. As cool as it's coming along, I want to remind you to follow me on Instagram. It's at TutVid. I post all kinds of behind-the-scenes photos. It's going to really become an integral part of TutVid moving forward. I'm playing around with the idea of some short tutorials over there as well, but it's going to be a place where you'll be able to ask questions and really interact with me, and I try to really interact with everybody over there on Instagram. So make sure you follow me, at TutVid. I've got a little bug thing that appeared from somewhere on one of these sides of the screen. Let's go ahead and get back to the tutorial. I beg your pardon here, but let's go 1850, something like that. Go back to shape dynamics. And this, honestly, this is all just going to depend on how big your document is, even how big the brush is. It all depends. There's a lot of touch and feel going on here. So we'll select that path, right-click, stroke path, brush tool, simulate pressure, boom, done. Okay, deselect. There we go, cool. So we have our first little graphic. Now what we'll do at this point is just duplicate this layer, Command or Control-J. And you're going to see here what I'm going to do is bring up Free Transform, and I'm just going to give these hotkeys once. Duplicating a layer is Command or Control-J, so we can just duplicate as many layers as we want. We're just going to work with one layer at a time, though. And then we're going to be free transforming these layers. Command or Control-T, that brings that up. And then you can just rotate whatever way you want, you know, resize these things, do whatever you want with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin just resizing and kind of messing around with these layers, just really trying to create this staggered, lots of like little fiber optic cables almost spinning around. It may be helpful to go view and shut off snapping temporarily so you can really get in there and get dirty. There we go. I'll duplicate. I'm going to duplicate the original layer again. Bring up Free Transform. We can group these layers, and in fact we will. I'm going to select them all, hit Command or Control-G to group them, and I'm going to call this, I'm actually going to call this lines. And we can take this and we can set it to a blend mode. In fact, maybe we will change this to the blend mode. Let's try like color dodge. It's really not going to matter right now, honestly, though. Let's just keep it at normal. It's not going to matter, or pass through as a group. It's not going to matter right now until we get sort of the paint stroke underneath it. So let's go ahead and set up that paint stroke. Now, because this paint stroke is going to be technically underneath the lines group, let's create a layer beneath the lines group, and let's call this paint. And again, we'll probably do this 3 or 4 times with this paint stroke. Let's set up the brush, though. I'm going to double-click to open my brushes panel. In fact, I want to load a different set of brushes. So with the brush tool, I can just right-click anywhere, select this little flyout menu. I'll right-click up here for the sake of getting this kind of centered up. And I think I'm going to go with the thick, heavy brushes. I think that's got the brush I'm looking for. I'm going to choose OK. Yeah, here we go. So I'm just looking over here. I don't know that I want something with kind of these jaggy edges. I like something that's a little smoother like this, but it's still like, you can see here, it's going to give me like that, you know, a brush definitely painted that stroke, so I like that. All right, so with shape dynamics, now this is a much larger brush, so in fact, first thing we should do is size it down a little bit. So let's size it down, maybe to like 60, maybe a little bit smaller even, 55. Yeah, that looks good. 55 looks good. Bump it up a little bit, 58, just for good measure. All right, let's go to Shape Dynamics here. Select Shape Dynamics. We're going to do the same thing, fade this bad boy out. Now, you can see this looks kind of funky, and that's because minimum diameter is set to 20%, which basically means never get smaller than 20%. Let's set minimum diameter to 0. Voila, look at that. We want to increase fade. Well, it probably doesn't need to be 1800. Probably more like 750 would work for this brush size. I'm just going to guess. 750 might even be a little bit large, but we'll check on it. Again, we're going to go transfer, and we're going to do the same exact thing, fade. And we're going to say, hey, look, you go out, was it 750? Is that what I chose? Something like that. Great. All right, I'm going to double-click on brush. And now what we're going to do, we're on our paint blank layer. Our foreground color is still that green. We're going to go back to our path, select our path, right-click, stroke path. And again, brush, simulate pressure, hit OK. And if we shut that off, or we click away from our path, great. Whoops, undo that. Didn't mean to click on that. I'm going to hide the lines real quick so we can see. All right, so 750 is definitely not enough of a fade. So let's just undo, back up a couple times here. There we go. We've got a blank paint layer again. Open up our brushes panel. Let's try boosting this guy out to like 1350, almost doubling it, but not quite doubling it. So 1350, let's try that. And we're on the paint layer. Great. Paths. Right-click on the path. Stroke path. Right. We've done this 1,000 times, it feels like. Click away. All right. That looks pretty cool. So we got nice smooth edges. We've got a brush that starts with a nice strong paint, a swath of paint, and just whips around and disappears. Now that we've done that, we can just duplicate our paint layer, right, and then rotate this guy. So we'll rotate this guy around, maybe bring it down a little bit, bring it inward a little bit, really try to make this interesting. Maybe bring it outward a little that way. Something like so. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the original paint layer. Again, I like to duplicate the original paint layer because it's not kind of all squashed and crammed and twisted and all of that. Great. Let's bring that down a little bit. Let's bring this inward a little bit. Stretch it this way just a smidge. There we go. Cool. And then I think I'm going to duplicate the original paint layer again because this very bottom paint layer I'm just going to simply blur. I want to blur it. I want to give myself a glow. In fact, maybe what I'll do is duplicate it one more time and just rotate it around, something like that, and then merge both of these layers together. Just select them. Select the top one, hold down Shift, select the bottom one, and then Command or Control E to merge them. And maybe I'll just note that this is a blurred layer, something like that. There we go. All right, so with the blurred layer, we're just going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and, well, 250 pixels is way too much. Let's try maybe 6. 6 is a little not quite enough. 12, not quite enough. Maybe 22. Still not enough. Maybe 32. There we go. Something like 32 looks good. And what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and set this blurred paint layer to the blend mode of Linear Dodge Add, and we're going to reduce the fill opacity pretty substantially. Something between 40 and 50 will probably work great. All right, let's turn on the first of the paint layers. Now with this paint layer, we're going to set it to the blend mode of screen and see how that interacts with the background. All right, so you can see it's kind of absorbing some of that background color. Let's turn on the next one. We're going to set this one to the blend mode of color dodge. Okay, you're going to see it's going to sort of allow it to interact with the other paint streaks. Reduce the opacity of this to something like 50. Don't worry if it's looking a little bit transparent. The effect really starts to pile on the more we apply stuff to it, so don't be too concerned. Let's grab the top layer here. In fact, I'm going to hit Command or Control T. I'm just going to boost this guy up a little bit. Yeah, something like that. I'm not gonna mess with it too much. All right, now with this one, we're also gonna go color dodge, and we'll set this to set a layer opacity of like 70, 75 for this. So you can see we're kind of creating this effect, and our like streaking lines are gonna live on top of this painted on effect. Now the streaking lines are a little difficult to see. Because everything that's going on underneath them right now. But maybe to make these appear a little bit more, let's try going back to and setting these to the blend mode of color dodge. Look at that. You can see now they're appearing as these kind of crazy lines. I don't think there's enough of them. Let's select all of these lines. I'm going to just hold down my Alt or Option key and drag them upward. So we just duplicated the lines. Let's grab the Move tool, and what we'll do is just move the lines up and maybe over just a little bit. Maybe hit Command or Control T, right-click, and choose to flip them horizontal and rotate them a little bit. That's going to kind of help, I don't know, just help make it look a little bit more organic, like we're not duplicating and twisting and moving things, right? And very quickly we can double up kind of that line effect, all right? Cool. So that looks pretty good. Maybe the line should have been a little thicker, but hey, what do we do now? Nothing. We'll just make the whole group just a little bit larger with free transform, something like that. Yeah, and you can play around with it, mess around with it as much as you want. I'm not going to spend all day working on it. What we will do, though, is duplicate the entire lines layer group by hitting Command or Control J. Right-click on that and choose to, where is it here? Dun, 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 dun. Merge the group. There it is, all the way at the bottom. Merge the group, so we've got this whole group of lines. And to sort of add zip to the rest of these lines, make them stick out a little bit more, let's just set this to a blend mode of soft to light. So you can see it's just going to increase the contrast specifically of those lines in kind of darker areas of that particular Olympic ring. In fact, I'm going to add even more lines. I'm going to duplicate all of these layers. And you can just come in here, obviously, and duplicate as many of these as you want. Let's move these inward even more and just rotate them a little bit. So you can see, there we go. Now we really have kind of a cool spiraling effect. And it's really pretty quick once you get your initial lines down. It's not all that difficult to set it up. All right, so once we've done this, this is our first ring. So we're going to select the top lines layer right there, and then hold down Shift and select the bottom paint blurred layer, and we're going to group this. So I'm going to double click, and I'm going to call this green ring, because this obviously is going to be our green ring. Now to get our next ring, what we're going to do is duplicate this entire layer group by clicking, dragging it down, and dropping it on the new layer icon, and we're going to name this layer, let's do the blue ring right next to this. So let's drag this guy over. maybe something right about there. All right, we're kind of eyeing up that gap. Now let's duplicate blue ring by dropping down onto the new layer icon, and let's make this, let's go red ring. All right, so let's do the red ring. I think this is the order I did it in the other one. Something like that appears to be pretty close. Maybe that, and we'll manually just line this up to the center of the document in just a moment. All right, let's drag this down, drop it on the new layer icon. We'll drag this guy over here, kind of line it up. Kind of like that. Our Olympic rings might be a touch too thick for the size of them. And you know what? Let's just correct that here before we go any further. We can make all of these a little bit larger by just holding down Shift and selecting green ring, hitting Command or Control T, and just holding down Shift and dragging these rings downward a little bit. We don't want to make them, too much bigger. Maybe we'll just increase them by 115% width and height. There we go. It's just going to give us more room to kind of play with these guys. All right, so we're going to duplicate that red ring again, drag it down to the new layer icon, and we're going to drag this one over here. You can see that kind of meshes a little bit better, at least. And drop it about right there in place. And let's make this the yellow or the orange ring. I guess it's really orange. It's probably going to look kind of yellow with the color effect we're rolling with here. All right, let's drag this down, drop it on the new layer icon. And what color was this ring? Oh, this is sort of the pinkish ring, right? So we're going to drag this sucker right over here. So at this point, we have all 5 of the rings on the Photoshop document. It's looking pretty good. They're all the same ring, however. So you can see the paint stroke all begins at the same place. So we're going to individually rotate all of these, and then we're going to go and start doing the color change, and then we're going to quickly just hammer out kind of the finishing effects for this document. So let's jump back into it here. What we want to do is select first the blue ring, hit Command or Control T, and we'll just rotate this maybe something like that. So now all 5 of our Olympic rings all look different, and they're all looking pretty cool. So let's begin with the pink ring, and let's go ahead and create, let's turn our colors on, I guess, first. Let's create a solid color adjustment layer. So solid color adjustment layer, and when this color picker pops up, I can literally just sample the pink. There we go. We're filling that entire solid color layer with pink and just covering everything with pink. We want to mask it to just the layer group below, so we can use the hotkey Command, Option, or Control, Alt, and the letter G. And you can see that the pink is now just masked to that bit of graphic. Now, it's not really preserving all this explosive color. It's just making it a flat pink. So we can experiment. Maybe screen. Does that look good? It's a little washed out. What does overlay look like? Overlay, because remember, our original ring is this green color. So overlay is kind of making it more of this cyan type thing. What if we just tried changing the colors? Well, that's not too bad. What about hue? Hue looks not too bad. I think I'll end up rolling with color. We are still losing a little bit of the explosiveness of it, but I think that's actually not bad. I'm going to roll with color for this one, and you can always open up this layer and just tweak and adjust the exact color if it needs to be tweaked a little bit more to really help nail the color that you're going for. But, you don't have to, go wild if you're not getting absolutely what you need. I'm going to stick with my original pink. All right, let's go down to the orange ring over here. All right, great. So we have our Olympic rings. Now what we want to do is mask the rings a little bit so they sort of look like they're actually interlocking with one another. First thing we need to do is add a layer mask to each of our layer groups. So blue ring, we're probably only going to be masking the orange and the pink rings because we're just going to mask the bits so it looks like they're running underneath each of the top rings. So let's just add our layer masks here to the pink ring. Guys, I came well prepared for this tutorial. All right, the pink ring and the orange ring. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and I'm going to load that green ring as a selection. Hold down Command and Shift. This would be Control and Shift on the PC. And just clicking each of those layer thumbnails. All right, now I want to mask just this portion of the orange ring. So here on the orange ring layer group, right, it's that. I'm going to paint with black. So I'm going to grab my brush tool, right-click. I'm going to go back to the basic brushes. I'm just going to hit OK. And I'll just select a hard edge brush. It really doesn't matter. Make it a little bit bigger maybe. There we go. Set my foreground color to black, and I'm just going to paint that away. There we go. Command or Control D, and you can see it now looks like that bit of the ring actually runs beneath the green. Now, we could mask away the green where it runs beneath the orange, and maybe actually we will do that to see if it looks a little cleaner, because I kind of dig the way that looks. But let's load the blue ring as a selection just so we can finish masking away the bottom of the yellow one. So open up the blue ring. We're going to do the same deal here where we just Command, Shift, click each of those layer thumbnails, go back to that orange ring, and paint it away just like so. And just be careful. You know what, maybe actually I should be using a soft edge brush just because there is a little bit of kind of overlap. So we're going to go with a soft edge brush. Whoop, just ignore that. My mistake. And that actually looks really nice. It just fades it together so beautifully. All right, so we're going to be masking this part of the green and this part of the blue. So let's load that orange as a selection. By the way, I use the little hotkey here, reselect. It's Command-Shift-D. Just brings back your last used selection. All right, so here on green ring, let's just paint this away. All right, something like so. And then we'll go over to the blue ring and we'll paint this away. It's just going to allow the orange ring to sort of establish dominance as being like the top guy there. In fact, over here on the green ring, I'm going to set my foreground color to white and just paint in a little bit there to kind of allow those colors to mesh together a little bit. We'll do the same thing over here for the blue ring. It's really just, you know, a matter of almost blending this by hand, all right, and making it look good. There we go. You can see that looks pretty sharp. Over here, green ring still needs a little bit more underneath the blue ring. There we go, something like so. That looks kind of neat. And it definitely looks like our rings are fading together with orange ring. I'm going to come back into here and just paint a little bit of this back in. I feel like it needs to look a little bit more solid. There we go, cool. All right, now let's do the same thing here with the pink ring. So we're going to load the blue ring as a selection using that same Command-Shift. And we're going to go to our pink ring. All right, you can see this is the pink ring layer group. There's the mask. And we're going to go ahead and paint. Oh, we got to make sure we're painting with our foreground color set to black. Go ahead and paint that black to make that go away. We're going to load up the red ring. So here under red ring, Command-Shift, select each of those. Back here to the pink ring layer mask. And go ahead and paint that away. And you can see that's a fairly drastic effect. Hit Command or Control-D. And it definitely looks like that ring is now tucked beneath both of those, but because the blue is kind of overpowering it, it almost now looks like the pink ring is completely behind all of these, so we really definitely want to go in here and at least paint away part of the blue so the pink ring can kind of establish some dominance up here. So we're going to go to blue ring, Command-Shift, select all of them. I'm going to go into, what am I thinking? Oh no, hold on. We want to load the pink ring as a selection. What am I thinking here? I'm not thinking. Command-Shift-click all of those. Great. Let's go to the blue ring mask, and I'm going to paint with black to paint away some of that and allow the pink ring, to establish some dominance. I'm going to do the same thing up here with the red ring. Paint away just a kiss of that. I'm going to deselect and look at it, and it looks like the blue ring needs to be, what I'm talking about when I'm talking about blending these edges in, you can see how there's kind of this like gray area. So I set my foreground color to white and just gently click until it kind of blends back to the edge of the pink beautifully. You see how it still looks like the pink is definitely going over top of the blue? I'm going to do the same thing here with the red ring. See how there's kind of some like dark edges as it approaches the pink ring? I want it to look like it's solid color to solid color. That way we get these really nicely looking interlocking rings. So it's kind of just a little trick of the eye, so to speak. All right, now that we have our rings and they're kind of set up, I'm not going to mess with them too much, even though the more I look at them, the more I want to tweak and adjust them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down beneath the green ring, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this Particle Burst. We're going to create a few particle burst layers here to create kind of this bursting particle effect as our sort of all these graphics exploding outward from our Olympic rings. What we could do with these rings at this point is select all of these layers. I'm just going to group them up here, and I'm going to call this rings. That way we preserve all the different blend modes. We're not messing around with anything. And there they are. Part of the reason I would like to convert this to a smart object is because I kind of sort of want to scale it down just a little bit. I want to make it a little bit smaller, but I would still like to preserve the larger graphic. But let's go ahead and just size it down a little bit. In fact, now that we have it in a layer group, we can go select all, grab the move tool, and align this to the document's center points. There we go. Command or Control-D to deselect. All right, great. So now that we've done this, let's go back to the particle burst layer. I'm going to grab my brush tool, and I'm going to choose a pretty big soft-edged brush. 500 pixels is probably great. Maybe I want to make it just a smidge bigger. If I can make it a smidge bigger, I'll do it by hand. Let's go 650, something like that. Make the brush palette collapse. Or brush panel collapse, excuse me. We want to paint kind of a big blurb of color here. So I'm going to hold down my Alt key and sample green. I'm going to paint green up here by my green ring. I'm going to go blue, and I'm going to paint blue here by my blue ring. I'm going to go red and paint red by the red ring. You're going to see this is all going to make sense in a second. I'm going to go orange, paint some orange out here by my orange ring, and then last but not least, some pink down by the pink ring. All right, great. So this is our particle burst. We want to sort of fade this together a little bit more so it just kind of blends a little bit. So we'll go filter blur, use our good old friend Gaussian blur, go with like 150 pixel blur. Just going to help kind of mesh some of that together. Maybe just duplicate the layer, Command or Control J. Nah, one layer is enough. And now what we need to do is apply a layer mask that covers this entire layer. So go Layer, Layer Mask, and choose to hide all. It's going to give us just a solid black layer mask. Now I'm going to hide my colors layer group for a second. I want to load in one of my brush packs. This is where you want to load in your particle brushes. So just right-click with the brush tool, select the flyout menu, and choose to replace brushes. And I'm going to choose, I've got this Dust Particles brush pack. I don't even remember where I got it from. I think I bought it. Maybe it was free. I don't remember. But these are amazing little particle brushes. You can really use any particle brush that you like, though. I'm going to grab like this brush here. 2400 pixels is way too big. I'm going to maybe go like 1200, see what that looks like. 1200 still probably a little bit too big. Let's try 850. 850 is probably more about what we're looking for. We need to customize this brush, though, so open the Brushes panel. We're going to, as it seems we have this entire time, tick on Shape Dynamics and, well, select Shape Dynamics, in fact. I'm going to choose Size Jitter. I'm going to change Size Jitter, bring it all the way up to 100. This means every time I click the brush, it's going to change the size automatically in between clicks. I'm also going to set Angle Jitter to 100, so it's continually spinning and rotating, and that's probably good. I'm going to collapse my brush panel. Set my foreground color to white. We're painting on the mask. Now what's going to happen is every time we click once, we're going to get some color revealed. You can see up here by the green, it's going to show green. Over here by the blue, it's going to be blue. Over here by the red, it's going to be red. It's going to be pink down here. So what we can do is just begin clicking, and Photoshop is going to just start revealing just little specks of our color layer that we just created. Well, see, that was just a little bit too much down there. There we go, something like that. Let's bring some more green out up there. Let's bring some blues out. Let's bring some more red out over here. I want some red to be exploding. Some blue, blue to green. Bring some pink back here to the center of the pink. The pink's got to have some energy coming off of it. There we go. All right, and then I'll just click around a few times, just kind of in the center, so it looks like there's a fair amount of particle-y debris right there in the center. Now, a quick trick, if you have a brush, like this is just too big for anything left that I'm doing, you can just click out here off the document. It'll give you a new brush. There we go. Get some nice green. I want to bring more green out up here. See, I don't quite like that brush either. There we go. Bring some more red out. Bring some blue out. Bam. Love it. Cool. So you can see we're really bringing out a lot. It's a little bit too big. Really just bringing out a lot of our, whoop, accidentally right-clicked, bringing out a lot of our color here. So shut that layer off, all the speckles go away, boom, they're there. Great. What we want to do now is bring just a copy of these speckles up onto their own layer. So I'm going to Command or Control click the layer mask. It loads every single one of those little speckles as a selection. Now, it's very important that you select the actual layer and hit Command or Control J. This is going to, you can see, give us a copy of just all of the speckled bits of color we saved. I'm going to name this layer Zooming Blur. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn the original layer back on. Zooming Blur, we can actually convert this to a smart object because we're going to be using a filter on this. And maybe if we want to get back in and adjust it later, well, we'll have that option. So with the Zooming Blur layer, we're going to go Filter, Blur Gallery, and choose good old Path Blur. Now with the Path Blur, what I want to do is drag my starting point right to the middle of the blue ring, or whatever your center ring is. And then drag the direction in which the blur is going to go straight upward away from from the center of that ring. So now the whole blur is moving upward. However, I want my reds to be exploding out this way. So I'm going to click, and then I need to click the end point to just kind of lock that path. And now my particles are going to be zooming out of the red. I'm going to do the same thing over here for green, and then click to kind of seal that little, zoom effect off. Just make them explode outward from each of the rings. You can see it kind of wreaks havoc in the middle, but it's also kind of creating this cool vacuum-looking effect. And part of what you want to then do is, in order to just help out some of these curved areas, is just come in and create additional paths for your path blur. See, I just click once, I drop my endpoint, and I click the endpoint a second time just to make sure it seals off the path. Boom. Coming out of the middle there. So now we have kind of this blur that's just shooting, racing out of the center of our Olympic rings, and it looks pretty cool. Go ahead and hit OK. You can adjust the speed and amount of blur, but I think it actually looks kind of cool the way it is. What we want to do is duplicate this zooming blur layer just to intensify it, Command or Control J. And the top zooming blur layer, I think I want to set it to the blend mode of screen. It's going to brighten things up a little bit. And the lower one I want to set to the blend mode of color dodge. It's going to kind of help things just blend together a little bit. Now you can see we have an intense level of this zooming particle-y effect there in the middle of our rings. So one of the things that we might want to do is group all of this effect just by, select the lower layer, the bottom layer, hold down Shift, select the top layer, Command or Control G, and we'll name this zooming particles. And then we can throw a layer mask onto this layer group. And again, I want to use that same brush that I was using, a very randomized brush, crazy size jitter, crazy angle jitter. What I'll probably do is make the brush tip shape a bit smaller though, maybe like 500 instead. I don't want it to be giant. And then I'll just set my foreground color to black first and foremost. And then I'll just click a few times here in the middle. This is going to kind of lighten things up. If I shut off the mask, that's before, that's after. So we just kind of lighten things up a little bit. I'm not going to be too picky for the sake of this tutorial, but just know you have that option. All right, now the next thing we want to do is duplicate our entire rings layer group. So I'm going to drag that down and drop it on the new layer icon, and then I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to, there it is, merge the group. So merge this into one layer. It doesn't give us the best effect because it flattens out a lot of the color effects, but we don't care about that right now. We're actually going to blur this entire effect, or this entire set of rings. In fact, I'm going to duplicate this because we may end up doing it twice. I don't know. I'm going to try it, see if I like it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. We'll see. Here with the rings, we can right-click, convert this to a smart object because we're using another path blur. We're going to go blur gallery path blur. And by the way, it's just more force of habit when I do that. You don't need to convert to a smart object to use path blur. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to create kind of this blur that arcs from the bottom upward. So we're going to go up, and then over here with this, just going to arc it outward that way. That looks kind of cool. I'm going to increase the speed maybe. Something like that looks cool. Go ahead and hit OK. And let's set this, let's try setting this to the blend mode of color dodge. That's going to really, you're going to see it's going to kind of juice things up quite a bit, too much. So let's just bring the opacity back to around 30. I do like what it's doing in terms of really kind of spicing things up, brightening almost, and giving us some of that bite again to our Olympic rings. That's really neat. And I'm still going to save my other rings layer here. I'm just going to keep the layer shut off. Maybe we'll come back to it in a moment. All right, let's create another new layer here, and we're going to name this layer flares because we're going to start adding some brightness flares. Now, right off the bat, I know I want this to be set to the color blend mode of color dodge, or to the blend mode of color dodge, I should say. Color dodge is this amazing blend mode, especially when you're working with kind of darker images where you want this very specular, like you want almost the lights to have this like zing and this bite and sharpness to them. Color dodge seems to be just a great blend mode for doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our brush tool, right-click. This is where you would load in whatever optical lens flare brush pack you got. And I have this one here. Oh, it's by a company called PSD Box. I believe it's probably free. Optical lens flares. This is the one I'm going to use. Give it a second. It's going to load in. And I'll choose this guy right here. 2,500 pixels for the brush size. Might be a touch large. Let's go like 2,000. See what that looks like. All right, that's pretty cool. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to bring my colors back because I want to kind of give a lens flare of the same color as the area on which I'm painting it. So let me just explain here. So I'll go like orange, and I'll throw an orange lens flare there. All right, I'll go like green, and I'll throw a green lens flare there. So that green lens flare is a little too big. Maybe make my brush a little smaller. There we go. And then I can go like blue lens flare. I'll make a pretty big blue lens flare like right there. Ooh, that's way, way, way too much. Maybe I'll do a much smaller blue lens flare. I didn't realize how that was going to make it look. Maybe a smaller blue lens flare. And now see, that's still kind of rich for my taste. There we go. Very small blue lens flare there. Oh, let's go with red. We're going J.J. Abrams on this this thing right now. There we go. That's pretty cool. As you can see, there's before, there's after. We really just give it this, I don't know, really neat, like, space age effect look. It's kind of cool. If we take the original rings, let's see what happens if we set this to, like, overlay. Soft light, maybe. I don't know. I feel like it adds kind of a neat, almost mid-tone, contrasty punch to it. It's kind of cool. Let's just leave that there. I kind of dig that a little bit. And now at this point, we want to add kind of some background elementy stuff just to fill in some of the space down here at the bottom. I'm going to shut the colors off. I'm going to set my my foreground color to an exact 50% gray. I think that's going to work well with this brush. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this Geo Shapes, and you guessed it, right-click. We want to load in those geometric shapes. So again, I'm just going to choose Replace Brushes. Where are my geometric shapes? Right here, I'll just go Geo 3. Okay, this looks good. I'll go with like this one here, 540. I'm actually going to make it a little bit larger than it was initially intended to be. I'm going to push it up to like 1,000. Yeah, that looks cool. Now with this brush, I want to open up the brush panel once more, go to Shape Dynamics, and I want to change the angle jitter. I don't necessarily care about changing the size. Maybe I'll do size a little bit, like a 20% size jitter. But I mainly just want to go ahead and begin painting some shapes. I'm going to make it actually a little bit larger. All right, so like a shape there, maybe like a shape over here. I'm going to click once. I want to make this a little bit more interesting. Come on, give me some interesting shapes here. Cool. Nah. There we go. That's kind of neat. I'll push this up right through there. Cool. Nice, nice, nice. That's all right. I feel like I've gotten that little triangle on the end a lot. Maybe I can't avoid it. Let's go. Whoop. It's a little bit too much for that corner, actually. There we go. All right, cool. So something like that is probably good. And then what I want to do with this layer is I want to set this layer, again, to our favorite blend mode today. That is Color Dodge. And what I'll do is reduce the opacity kind of until it blends and looks cool, until it looks kind of like I want it to look. So that's probably going to be about it. We've got this effect. You can see we've done so much with it. We built it from nothing, and just right here, one take, we've gone through and made this. It looks, I'm sure, vastly different from the other one that I did. The other one almost has, you know, more pastel colors. But you can see here with the older one how kind of maintaining narrower Olympic rings does kind of have some benefits. But hey, look, you can pick your choice. We've got two very, very different effects, but created using the same exact technique, and it really just depends on the brushes you use, that paint swirl that you do to kind of establish the base of your ring. That's probably the most important step of this tutorial, because that's going to do the most to dictate the way your rings look. So if you make that a much narrower brush, you're going to have thinner rings, which is probably what we should have done, a little bit thinner than we have here. But hey, it still turned out pretty cool. It's very vibrant. If you want it to be less vibrant, maybe start with a more muted color for your first ring, and you can always boost saturation later. Maybe that would be something I would go back and do. Maybe it needs a little bit of like brightness up here in this corner, so we could, you know, throw an additional layer on here, and we can call this, you know, flare as well. Set this to, well, let's just go Color Dodge since we've been doing it all day. Right click. I'm going to go back to those flares that we had a moment ago. Optical flares, great. Dink, 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 cool. And then, I don't know, just pick whatever. I mean, we got this 2400 pixel one here, but we would need to go brush tip shape and flip the x-axis, and then make my brush panel go away. And then I can just like click once here. I'm just painting with gray, so it's not going to be like as bright as maybe it should be. Maybe if we sample one of these blues instead and we paint, get like a heavy blue effect from the top. Maybe we want it to be a heavy green effect from that top corner, right? Something like that. Maybe that doesn't work so well. Maybe pink would work better. I don't know. You can just mess around with it. And then you can do something like over your background layer, we can throw another solid color adjustment layer, right? Let's just go with the color pink, and let's set this to, let's go with Color Dodge. Just, again, we've been doing it all day. Reduce the opacity a lot, and you can see, I mean, that changes things a lot as well. We could go and shift the color to something like a blue, and you start to get a very blue influenced background. You could set it to like a yellow, and it's going to make your reds kind of richer. Obviously, if you go orange, something like that, it's going to make it all the more rich. You can go with just a straight pink. There's so much you can do when you begin, you know, and you layer your effect, and now you can see our whole effect looks even more different. Maybe I want to bring back some of that vibrance that we sucked out with that vibrant saturation layer. Maybe I want to reduce the opacity of my flare up here in the top corner. So as you can see, there's so much that you can do with this effect, and just really take control of the final finished piece and what it looks like and what you want it to look like. So for this dynamic, colorful, exploding, particle-y, Olympic ring type effect in Photoshop, that is it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I guess I'll catch you in the next one.
Stop downloading and start uploading. That's a quote by Jay Bradner, and I think it's so perfect, because when you move from being just a strict consumer of media to a creator of media and content and art, something changes, something becomes incredible, something amazing happens. You should try it. Have you created something today? Leave a comment down below in the comments and let us know if and what you have created today. Also, hit the like button for this video tutorial. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of these videos moving forward. You can sign up for my newsletter. I'll send you 30 tips and tricks on how to move faster and work faster with Photoshop. The moment you sign up, boom, it gets emailed right over to you. And also you can follow me on Snapchat, on Instagram, on Twitter, and of course on Facebook. Until next time, I will catch you guys later.